Hello everyone, this is Lord Kurnion, and this is round 2 from the Colonial Carnage GT that took place in Williamsburg, Virginia, part of the Williamsburg muster, in early February. This is game 2. After my first round matchup, this saw me on a pretty high table. I think I was table 4 at this point, and I drew up against a pretty good player. He's going to Masters actually this weekend, and so I knew he was a good player, and he was taking a pretty good list, so let's jump right into it. So this is my list if you haven't seen it before. I have a Bloodthirster, Greater, Lesser. In this game I rolled multi-wounds, 2 special ability, and then I took the multi-attack sword for my other gift. This gave me, I thought, the best ability to deal with his list, and I mean, you'll probably guess why when I get to that. I was at a Herald of Khorne with the skull on the Skull Throne with the Hatred Locust. I had 23 Bloodletters, 18 Bloodletters, 2 units of 5 Fleshhounds, 7 Furies of Khorne, 8 Furies of Khorne, 2 Skull Cannons, and a Soul Grinder of Khorne with the Claw and the Flame Cannon. So here's my opponent's list. I call it Slaanesh Demons. Really, he has kind of a hodgepodge, but his general's Slaanesh, and, well, fighting Slaanesh Demons is fluffy when I'm using Khorne Demons. Anyway, he has a Keeper, level 4 Lure of Cacklebomb, 2 Greater Gifts, and I have no idea what he rolled, I completely forget. 3 units of 10 Horrors with Musician and Standards. It was actually pretty amusing when he rolled the spells for this. He rolled the first one, he rolled Glean Magic. Well, I don't have any magic, so that's a useless spell. So he's like, okay, default to Signature. Rolls the second unit, rolls Glean Magic. Alright, default to Signature. Rolls the third unit of Horrors, rolls Glean Magic. Pretty awesome for me, pretty terrible for him. He didn't roll the spell he obviously really wanted. He didn't get Gateway. Instead, he stuck with Gateway's redheaded stepchild. You know, it only does D6 strength, D6 hits. Nowhere near as powerful as Gateway, and so I was pretty lucky there that he basically got no useful spells out of his horrors. He also had 15 Plague Bearers with full command, 2 units of 3 Beasts of Nurgle, 2 units of 5 Flesh Hands that were ambushing. He has a Soul Grinder. He has 2 Soul Grinders. Both of them have the Claw. Both of them are marked Slaanesh. One of them has the Flame Cannon. The other one has the Stone Thrower. So, as I said in a previous video, if you watched mine and Malasar's hobby update, and thank you, I mentioned that this is probably one of the best games I played all weekend. It was against a really, like I said before, it was against a really good opponent. This guy that's going to Masters. I knew he's been around the scene for a while. He really knows what he's doing, and he uses demons pretty regularly. So I knew this was going to be a list that he was familiar with, that he was comfortable with, and that he was going to be playing well with. Looking at this list, though, he has 3 big monsters that are all marked Slaanesh. Well, my entire army has hatred against anything marked Slaanesh automatically. I don't even need the Herald nearby. So that's nice. I'm going to try to take advantage of that, especially with the rolling up the multi-wound ability on my Bloodthirster. Huge advantage, especially for all these multi-wound monsters that are marked Slaanesh. And then with the extra 2 attacks, my Bloodthirster can really kind of go pell-mell into these things and have a really good chance of knocking them out. Otherwise, the Keeper is something that I'm really worried about. Lure of Cacklebomb can really mess with me, especially with a lot of his combat abilities. I mean, one-on-one, none of my units can take on Beast of Nurgle, but if I get a couple units into a Beast of Nurgle, I might be able to take them out. The Lure of Cacklebomb can mess with that. He did roll Cacklebomb, he also took Acquiescence, so he has 2 spells that force random movements. One of them forces random movements in a bubble, which is terrible. And that can really mess with me, really interfere with my ability to chaff him and isolate his units. But that is the goal, to chaff him up and isolate his units, get combo charges, and try to hopefully corner him so that I can basically pick the combats that I want and avoid the combats I don't. So, after that basic review and basic strategy, let's jump into the report. So here's my opponent's deployment going left to right. He has his first Soul Grinder. This is the one with the Flame Cannon. He has 3 Beasts next to that, 15 Plague Bearers. No, sorry, that's the 10 Horror unit next to that. Next to them, he has 15 Plague Bearers there. Then another 3 Beasts of Nurgle. Behind the Beasts, he has his Soul Grinder with the Stone Thrower. Next to them, he has another unit of 10 Horrors, and then on the far flank, he has his 10 unit of Horrors as well. Sitting behind that big rock thing, which is conveniently capable of blocking cannonballs, he has his Keeper of Secrets right there. Here's my deployment going left to right. I have my 1 unit of 23 Bloodletters, then my second unit of 18 Bloodletters. Behind them, I have my Skull Cannon to the left, my Skull Throne to the right, and my Bloodthirster kind of sitting there in between them. Moving a little bit more towards center, I have my Soul Grinder. with both my units of Furies behind them. Next to my Soul Grinder, I have my first unit of Fleshhounds. I have my second Skull Cannon sitting on that hill, and my other unit of Fleshhounds on the other side of that. The Fleshhound's goal is to rush ahead and try to get rid of his horrors. Right, I can use words. Get rid of his horrors, and I wanted my Skull Cannons kind of separated. Although this Skull Cannon is out of my general's range, if I get unlucky and roll Winds of Slash, that could be bad. But I kind of wanted to separate them for the sake of increasing the number of options I have for getting angles for behind that piece of impassable terrain. It's kind of hard to avoid shots when my Skull Cannons are this far apart and they can both move to get a better angle. It's going to be hard for him to dodge both cannonballs. So that was the goal. I want to shoot him out as quickly as possible, and you can see in this that we both kind of really focused towards deployment on what is my left flank, which is good for me because it kind of cuts into his mobility. My goal here is to basically break through his center as quickly as possible, corner him against the edge of the board, and use the board edge and my superior chaff in the form of my 2 units of Furies to pick the combats that I want. So we roll off our first turn, and he won the first turn. So starts off, he kind of realizes, he sees what I did with my cannons, that he really can't avoid shots from everyone, so he just kind of jumps out his keeper out into plain view and just kind of pretty obviously going for Cackle Bomb. Otherwise, he moves up pretty conservatively over on this flank. Soul Grinder moves up, Beasts move up towards the edge of the woods, Plague Bearers push a little bit more to the left to face off against my 23 Bloodletters. And then over here on the far flank, he pushed up even more conservatively. The Flame Cannon guy didn't go up that very much at all. Neither did the Beasts. Yep, here's the overview. We go into Magic, and he rolls up, I think it was 6 dice, so it was the Nurgle Winds, which hits his horrors. It didn't really do any damage to me, but it did hit this horror unit. Net result, he ended up doing 2 wounds to this horror unit, so starting to chip away. Nurgle was not pleased. And then it ended up being a 6-4 phase or so. He threw a lot of dice. He didn't want to risk failing to cast, and even 6 dice in Cackle Bomb, you're not that likely to get it off, because I think it's 24 plus to cast in Aura. So he threw all 6 dice at just the lower level, and I was unable to stop it. He put Cackle Bomb on my Skull Cannon. He did like 1 or 2 wounds, didn't kill me, but he did give me random movement, which is really going to make it hard for me to get a good shot on his keeper. So that's not ideal. Yep. Then we go to Khorne turn 1. Sorry for the terrible pictures. Apparently I'm a horrible photographer, but this is the only picture I have of this movement phase. You can see my 1 unit of Furies moved up behind the woods, opposite his 1 unit of Beast and his Soul Grinder. My Bloodletters kind of stayed relatively stationary. My cannon backed up to get a line on his keeper, and otherwise my Soul Grinder moved up to face towards the left to kind of hopefully corner him. My second unit of Furies moved up into the woods to chaff up his Beasts of Nurgle that were coming down closer to the middle of the board. And I actually really like that move. Because Furies are marked Khorne, they can use my general's leadership. And the nice thing about them is they're skirmishers, which means they're stubborn for instability tests in the woods, which is pretty awesome. I thought it was a pretty cool move. I'm not sure if even my opponent saw this, even though he's pretty common with demons. Most people don't mark their Furies, but being marked and being in woods means they're stubborn on leadership 9. So if he charges in with his beast, and if anyone survives, they're going to pretty much more than likely not take any crumble wounds, which is the goal. Winds didn't do much, but here's a view of my line that I got with my cannonball. And then over here on this flank, both my units of Fleshhounds moved up. The one moved up towards the middle pretty aggressively to get both out of the arc of sight of his keeper, and also to put pressure on his horrors so that his Soul Grinder basically has to respond to me, which was the goal. The other Fleshhounds also push up full speed towards his other unit of horrors on the far right. We go to shooting, and it didn't go well for my opponent. I rolled the first cannon, the one all the way on the far left. I rolled a hit, I rolled a wound, he failed his ward save, and I rolled a 6 for number of wounds. So the keeper drops bottom of turn 1, which is pretty awesome, really lucky for me. I was able to, with my movement, my cannon here, though, fortunately I didn't roll that high for my random movement, and the keeper stayed in my front arc, so I still could have shot him with this guy, but I mean, obviously it's much better to take him out with my first shot, which I did. Yep, there he is, hero of the match, getting rid of my opponent's level 4 turn 1. The other cannon, because the keeper was already dead, shot at the Soul Grinder. I hit, I wounded, and he made his ward save. So I bet my opponent wish he could trade those 2 ward save results, but, you know, I guess I just got a little lucky here. We go to Slash turn 2. So this is what I was talking about. I put my Flesh Hounds all the way up to put pressure on his unit of Horrors. The idea behind that was basically it forces his Soul Grinder to charge. His Soul Grinder, I think, was 8 or so inches away. He needed to roll an 8, which on 2 dice isn't very likely. But the more important thing that I wanted out of that was by him charging and being in combat, he can't go and drop a Stone Thrower on my Bloodthirster, which was the goal of this whole thing. So he takes the charge and he makes it, unfortunately, but what can you do? At least he can't shoot. Otherwise, his unit of Horrors behind the Soul Grinder wheeled to face towards my Flesh Hounds on the far right flank, and the Beast charged the Furies in the woods. Otherwise, things continue to move out. His Soul Grinder continued to go around the flank to get a potentially Flame Cannon shot on my bigger unit of Bloodletters. And we go into Magic. The winds result, I forget what it was, but bottom line is it did 1 wound to my Skull Throw and didn't really do anything else, so we go straight into Magic. He throws some spells at these Flesh Hounds, but Flesh Hounds are almost immune to magic, especially direct damage type magic that allow ward saves. They get a 2-up ward saves versus all magic that allows ward saves, so really nothing went through. We go to combat, and he whiffed a little bit. I mean, yeah, he didn't roll that many hits. He only did a couple wounds. I then in return did 2 wounds, so I was rolling hot, which was nice. I ended up losing combat by only a little bit. A couple more took a crumble from my leadership test, but not much. I have 4 wounds left on this unit, which is nice. In here, he did 6 wounds to this unit of Furies, but as I said before, these guys are within 18 inches of my general. They are stubborn in the woods as skirmishers, so I took my break test and I passed, and no more wounds were given. I actually did a wound to the beast, so go Furies. So Khorne turn 2, I started off with a charge of these Flesh Hounds into the unit of Horrors on this flank, and I made it pretty easily. Otherwise, here was something that was pretty critical juncture. So, like I said, I wanted to break through the middle so I can corner him in the far edge. So to do that, I need to get through these beasts. So the best thing to do that is I send in my Bloodthirster. So I send in my Bloodthirster, but beasts can all challenge. You know, they all count as unit champions, essentially. So I need to send something in to accept challenges. Send the smaller unit of Bloodletters in as well. But, you know, doing the math in my head when I was thinking about this, I kind of saw that basically I should be putting him on a very low leadership for break tests. He should have about 6 wounds left after it's all said and done before he takes his break test. Break test should be low, and you know he should crumble the rest of the way. But I wasn't going to put the life of my Bloodthirster at stake there, because if I fail to break them, his Plague Bearers can then charge the flank of my Bloodletters and give enough combat res between wounds and charge flank and ranks that it could potentially crumble my Bloodthirster. So I didn't want to do that. So I measured it to make sure, but I was able to do it. My Soul Grinder right there can move around the Bloodletters enough to get up and essentially act as glorified chaff for that unit of Plague Bearers. So that's exactly what I did. Both of those made the charge, and my Soul Grinder is able to move around to chaff up that unit of Plague Bearers, which was great. The Skull Throne moves up to give hatred to both my Bloodletters and my Bloodthirster. And then over on this flank, my Furies that were behind the woods move up to chaff both the beasts and the Soul Grinder to prevent the beast from charging into the flank of my Soul Grinder, and to prevent his Soul Grinder on the far left flank from fully whipping around and getting an ideal shot on my remaining unit of Bloodletters. The Skull Cannons both lined up shots on this Soul Grinder, try to drop him. Yep, there's that. So for shooting, both cannons could shoot at this Soul Grinder since we're using true line of sight. The first cannon hit and he passed his ward save. Second cannon hit, wounded, passed his ward save. So now he can't fail his ward saves versus my shooting. I bet, but he, it's fortunately for him, he failed the most important one. So we go into combat, and what I was worried about is ended up being what happened. My Bloodthirster whiffed. He ended up passing a good number of ward saves. My Bloodthirster only did about 2 wounds. My Bloodletters accounted for another couple. In return, he did 3 wounds to me. I won combat by a sizable amount, and he rolled low enough in his leadership test that he still has 6 wounds left on the unit. I have 1 Fury left in there. That Fury isn't removed as casualty. Basically, Bloodletters, the new plastic Bloodletters with wings are there's a special circle in hell reserved for trying to rank those guys up. They look great, but they're impossible. So I just replaced it with a base, but he's still there, just so you know. Over here, he whiffs again, actually. He only does about 2 or 3 wounds to me. I didn't do anything back. He wins by 3. I'm within General's leadership, and I passed my leadership on a 6, which was great. So holding him up for another turn. And then over here, my Fleshhounds whiff a little bit. I only do a couple wounds. He's not steadfast, but he passes break check fine. I think he still has 6 horrors left at the end of this. So we go to Slaanesh turn 3. He starts off with the obvious charge of his Plague Bearers into my Soul Grinder, and he charges the beasts into these blocking Furies right here. The Soul Grinder moves around them to line up a shot on my Bloodletters, and his 1 unit of ambushing Fleshhounds comes on, and they come on the far right edge of the board near my Fleshhounds that are fighting his horrors. Magic was largely uneventful. We go to combat. And he finally kills my last dog, but the dogs definitely earned their value by holding him up for a full turn, which was great. And then here, yeah, my Bloodthirster stops messing around, ends up killing the last of the Beasts of Nurgle. I don't even think any were left to take a break test, which was nice. And then here, yeah, Soul Grinders are toughness 7. They are hard to get through. Him at only strength 4, I then have a 5-up save. He ended up doing 2 wounds to me. I think 1 was poison and 1 was a successful roll to wound. Either way, I ended up saving any wounds he did to me. In return, I did, I believe, 7 total wounds. I won combat. He's steadfast. He failed by 1 and took 1 wound from Crumble. So, good job. My Soul Grinder ended up being pretty effective chaff against strength 4, turns out. Here, he whiffed pretty bad. The Beast should have totally been able to drop these guys without a problem. And but they didn't. They rolled pretty terribly, and I rolled low enough on leadership that by the end of combat I have 2 left, which actually is not ideal for me. I wanted him to drop this unit this turn. I have that 1 unit. I have that 1 Fury left that just got out of combat from the other Beast combat. He can fly over here to try to chaff, but the problem is when he kills the Furies in my turn, this unit of Furies in my turn, he can just reform to avoid any unit that I try to use to chaff up this unit of Beasts. So definitely not ideal, but what can you do? And then in this combat, yeah, my Fleshhounds also stop messing around, end up killing the rest of the Furies, which is nice, and they reform to face this unit of Fleshhounds. I could have charged the other unit of Horrors, but I realized I only have 4 Fleshhounds left. I'm never going to kill enough Furies to Horrors to break Steadfast, and then his Fleshhounds will just charge me in the rear and take me off, and I won't get either unit. Here, at least against his Fleshhounds, I'll be charging at Strength 4. I might win combat by a decent amount, because I'll be Strength 5 and he'll only be Strength 4, and I might be able to get him to crumble that way. So I was going to try that out. Oh, and after the combat with the Beast, my Bloodletters reform to charge the flank of the Plague Bearers. So we go to Khorne turn 3. My Fleshhounds obviously take this charge, and my Bloodletters, who had reformed after fighting the Beast, charge the flank of the Plague Bearers, and the writing is on the wall for that unit, I feel. The Bloodthirster also charged the Soul Grinder that just finished fighting my dogs. And otherwise, my remaining unit of Bloodletters that really haven't left my deployment zone, but they moved to wheel to just kind of start to close the door and pin him up against the board with whatever he has left. My Herald with the Hatred Locust moves up to give hatred to my Bloodletters, which is obviously ideal. And my remaining unit of Fury, my remaining solo Fury, moves over to try to chaff this unit of Beast, but as I said, he can just reform to avoid him in his turn. We go to shooting, and yeah, magic didn't do anything. Winds of bullshit didn't have an effect. We go to shooting, and yeah, between both cannons this time, both cannons got hits. He failed both wards, and I was able to get 6 wounds through to drop this Soul Grinder, which was great. Good shooting now. With that, yep, he's just been killing everything this game. Fantastic. Over here, these Fleshhounds, take a nap, basically. I think I do 1 wound, and he does a bunch of wounds back to me. I fail my break check by a couple, and I have 3 wounds left in this unit. Over here against the Plague Bearers, yeah, I don't even think he had anything left to take a break check. I pretty much wiped the unit on the charge, and I just reformed everything. Bloodthirster charging in, yeah, with the multi-wound 2 special ability, I was able to drop the Soul Grinder pretty easily. I got 3 or 4 wounds through, and that doubled to 6 or 8 wounds. Either way, I was able to drop this Soul Grinder. And obviously he got rid of the remaining Furies and he reformed so that he can charge past my Fury that is trying to chaff but failing. So in his turn he does take that charge into my Soul Grinder. And his second unit of ambushers comes on near the Skull Cannon on the right side of my board. I don't have a picture of that, sorry. And they obviously make that charge there. He doesn't have much left. Magic is largely uneventful. He only has the one unit of horrors, or I guess he has 2 units of horrors left, but they weren't able to really do much. In combat, he drops this unit of dogs and just kind of stays where he is. And over here, once again, I'm still toughness 7. He's still strength 4. He got 2 wounds through, or he got 1 wound through me with poison this round. He won by charge and 1 wound. I lose by 2, and I take 1 wound for my instability check. So we go to Khorne turn 4. My Bloodletters, with the way I reformed them, could wheel past the Soul Grinder, so they did, and they charged into this unit of horrors. And my other Bloodthirster charged into the only remaining unit of horrors there. This unit just kind of reforms and looks pretty there. This unit really brought their A game, really contributing a lot to today's game. But my Herald backed up, just kind of get protection in case he drops my Soul Grinder. I don't want him charging, getting an easy charge anyway on my Herald. And the Skull Cannon once again just reformed. Not worth shooting at anything. Well, there's nothing I can shoot at this point. This Skull Cannon, though, I think my opponent made a mistake when he brought his Fleshhounds on. He wheeled them in such a way to hopefully try to prevent my Skull Cannon from getting out of his arc. Unfortunately, he didn't see this move. I was able to move on an angle such that I got out of his arc of sight pretty easily, and not only that, I also got a really beautiful flank shot into his Fleshhounds. So that's what I did. I took it, and I ended up killing 2 whole dogs with my shot, which was great. This combat, he does another 1 wound or so to me, and I passed my break check, basically. Not much more to say about that. Here, my Bloodletters, not having hatred from the throne right now, didn't do so great. I ended up killing 6 all told. And the unit is still there. And then here, also didn't roll well. My Bloodthirster ended up basically at the end of combat. I had killed 4. He is still steadfast. He passes his break check fine. So we go to Slaanesh turn 5. The horrors against my Bloodthirster should still be there. I took this at the end of the turn. Sorry, a little bit of foreboding there. But his unit of dogs that had killed my dogs just wheeled and faced towards the rear of my Skull Cannon. And we go to combat. I kill the horrors pretty easily. He kills my Soul Grinder as well. He does 2 wounds, and I fail my leadership check by enough to drop them, and he reforms like that. Over here, my Bloodthirster once again stops messing around and is able to kill the last of the horrors, which is fine. So we go to Khorne turn 5. So I obviously took the charge into the flank of this Bloodletter unit, and this Skull Cannon took the charge into his other unit of Fleshhounds, which had turned to face my Skull Cannon so that they could charge in his turn 6. I just took the charge here. Otherwise, this unit of Bloodletters had reformed so they were capable of marching out of his arc of sight, so that's exactly what I did. I just marched out of arc of sight. Didn't really want to tango with a full health unit of Beasts of Nurgle. Combat, I dropped this unit, and he reforms. And then the Skull Cannon, yeah, I think between impact hits and the attacks from all my guys, I was able to drop this unit. I think I might have taken 1 wound in return, but either way, my Skull Cannon's still alive, and I dealt with that unit of Fleshhounds. So the net result was a 20-0. We just kind of called it here. He only has 1 unit left and only 1 turn. He can't charge anything, so we just kind of called it here. I think I played the game pretty well. I did pretty much exactly what I set out to do at the beginning of the game by basically trapping him against the board edge, picking my fights, and cleaning up as many points as I could. I think I did a good job with that. And yeah, so this game put me on table 1. Interestingly, Lord Malasar, who also just 20-0'd his opponent this round, is also on table 1. So next game, next battle report, we'll see the 2 people on this channel, me and Lord Malasar, facing off on table 1 on the last game of day 1. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this report. Post any comments or questions in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good one.